not going to liberate Palestine from Cologne.
No.
So it's not your job. It's our job. But we need your help. You know, we can't do this without international pressures. So we're having a meeting in about 3 months, a group of Palestinians and Israelis, to see if we can formulate a common program, a vision, a plan for the future that I want to talk to you about. I'm not sure if it's going to work. You know, but we have to have an end game. We have to propose a solution. Governments are not going to do that. Governments will keep this thing going forever. It's only the people that I think can give the vision. So we're going to have a meeting, and if we can formulate this common plan, then we'll come back to you and to say, support us. You see? But what I'd like to do today is just to bring you into some of our thoughts, some of the thoughts we have, some of the difficulties we have in terms of really formulating this vision. I think it'll be interesting for you, and also it'll give you a better sense of what the problems are in terms of resolving this conflict. So, so first of all, in a way, there is an easy, simple solution. And that's what's known as a two-state solution. It's not fair or just, because in the two-state solution idea, Israel is on 78% of the country. And all the Palestinians get is at 22%, you know, that's the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. Now, the Palestinians today are half the population of this country. And they will be the majority, whether refugees come back or not. You know, there were 5 million refugees that claimed the right to return. Whether refugees come back or not, there will be a Palestinian majority. And yet, the Palestinians have said, we will make peace with you, Israel. We will normalize relations with you for only 22% of the country. So this is a good plan for Israel. It's not so good for the Palestinians, but okay. The Palestinians accepted it 30 years ago. They accepted it in 1988. The two-state solution was adopted unanimously by the Arab League in 2002. So the whole Arab world has said to Israel, if you give up the occupation, we will normalize relations with you. And of course, the two-state solution is the solution of the international community. This is Germany's idea. This is Europe's idea. The whole international community is behind the two-state solution. So, normally that would be the end of my lecture. Now I can go home because you have the solution. The problem is, of course, there's one party that said no, and that was Israel. And I don't just mean the Likud government of Netanyahu and Sharon and Begin, but I mean the Labour Party as well. And the Labour Party is really the one that constructed the occupation. So this is from right to left. Israeli governments have said no. And it's not only they said no, but they've laid over the occupied territory what I call a matrix of control. The idea being that this is permanently a part of Israel. You know, in international law, an occupation is defined as a temporary military situation. So first of all, Israel says there is no occupation, because this is all our country. This is all the land of Israel, and you can't occupy your own country. So there's no occupation. Therefore, according to Israel, international law does not apply. In particular, the Fourth Geneva Convention. According to the Fourth Geneva Convention, it's forbidden for an occupying power to move its civilian population into an occupied territory, or to build settlements, or to harm the economy, or to deport the local people. So everything Israel's done, everything Israel does in the occupied territory is illegal according to the rules of the international community. I mean, Germany should be saying, regardless of whether you're pro-Israel or pro-anybody, what Israel is doing is illegal, period. And yet, the international community allows it to go on. And that's one of the problems that the whole world faces. If Israel is allowed to violate international law at will, and nobody stops it, and Israel wins, which is possible, and the occupation becomes permanent, and the Palestinians are permanently imprisoned, you know, that sends a very, very scary message to all the other oppressed peoples of the world, for whom international law and human rights are their only hope. So if Israel wins here with the help of Germany and the international community, I think it's a new world in which only power matters, and human rights, international law are just meaningless. So there's much more riding on this, resolving this, than only the issue of Israel and the Palestinians. This is a conflict of global significance. Okay? Are you with me? Yes. Okay. Those that didn't answer probably aren't. All right. Now, so Israel says there's no occupation, and Israel has also moved to make its control of the entire country permanent. And what it's done, most of you know, I won't go into detail. One thing is, of course, to build settlements. All these blue areas on this map, can we turn off these lights maybe in front? Is that possible?
Kann man das Licht hier vorne noch ausmachen?
Or
Dann sieht man das besser.
Or turn them down. I could see you could turn them down. It'd be better for the...
A few. You are not to be seen.
Okay.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nobody's scared? So then these blue dots all over are settlements. Israel began the minute the occupation started in 1967. Israel started settlements. So there are today about 200 settlements about 800,000 Israelis live in the occupied territory. In a couple of years, it'll be 1 million. And of course, what the settlements do, and then Israel built a whole matrix of highways, Israeli highways that both connect the settlements into Israel. So basically, the West Bank has really been incorporated into Israel. It isn't a separate area anymore, but also the settlements and the roads then fragment the Palestinian territory. And this, of course, goes back to Oslo as well, what was called Oslo II, where we set up areas A and B and C. So today, the Palestinian Authority has some kind of authority, not much, but some authority in areas A and B, the brown, the darker and lighter brown areas. A and B and Gaza, which is like a cage. A, B, and Gaza represent 40% of the occupied territory. So in other words, after all these years and all these negotiations, Yanni, all the Palestinians have is 40% of 22% of their country. And that divided into about 70 little islands that are areas A, B, and Gaza. And surrounding them all are area C, controlled by Israel, the settlements, the highways, and about 600 checkpoints, all through the occupied territory that prevent movement from one place to another. So basically, Israel has constructed a prison. The Palestinians are in prison. They have no rights. They have no economy of their own. They have no borders with Arab countries. They can't move, either internally. They can't work in Israel, and they can't even move. They can't move from the West Bank to Gaza. For about 20-some years now, it's been completely separated. They have no resources. 100% of the water is controlled by Israel. 85% of the water of the West Bank goes to settlements or into Israel. So the Palestinians are literally in a prison of cells that have no resources, no freedom, no rights, no economy. And that's where Israel says you will be forever, unless you leave. You see, so it's a prison, but it's a prison with the back door open. If you want to go to Jordan and out, if you want to go sometimes through Egypt, from Gaza and out, okay, fine, we'll happily let you go. But you don't come the other way, and you make it very hard for the Palestinians to stay. So I would argue that there is no more occupation. After 50 years, 800,000 Israelis, Palestinians in prison, all these physical facts on the ground being built, that Israel has turned the West Bank into Judea and Samaria. That it is basically a part of Israel. Now, in case you still didn't understand, in case you still think the two-state solution is possible, Israel built a wall. Okay? Just to be sure you get the message that there's no Palestinian state. The wall has two purposes. and it's not security. The wall has nothing whatsoever to do with security. As a matter of fact, the name of the wall officially is the separation barrier, not the security barrier. It has two purposes. One is to incorporate the large settlement blocks that Israel has built in the West Bank. These red areas are settlement blocks. So what Israel is doing today is taking all these individual settlements and consolidating them into large cities. So today in the parliament in Israel is a law that's going to be passed creating Greater Jerusalem, which means that Givat Ze'ev, Ma'ale Adumim, we cut out Bethlehem, and the Etzion block. And the Etzion block has two cities, Efrat and Beitar Illit. So we're talking about 4 large cities that will be attached to Jerusalem. So Greater Jerusalem is 15% of the West Bank and controls the whole central part and divides it it divides the West Bank. So it prevents any possible Palestinian state. Ariel is a part of Tel Aviv. You know, on this highway, you can get from Ariel to Tel Aviv in about 20 minutes. So that this whole area is being made into Tel Aviv. And Modi'in Illit is the largest settlement in the West Bank. So all in this area is beginning to grow what will be one of the largest cities in Israel. So basically, what you're beginning to get is that one megalopolis, one huge city, from Jerusalem like this to Modi'in to Ariel and Tel Aviv. This whole area is being urbanized, you know, so that, and then of course the Jordan Valley controls the border with Jordan. So the settlement blocks then Israel wants to annex to itself. And so the wall defines, you know, that's the separation. On one side is Israel, and the other side is Palestine. The other side is the second purpose of the wall, and that is to define the cantons, we call them cantons, in which the Palestinians will be imprisoned forever. So you can see there's a canton in the north, but you can see how there's settlements here. So you can see how crazy the wall goes to define this canton of the Palestinians in the north. There's a weird little canton in the center. Again, cutting out all the settlements that you can. And there's a canton in the south. And then Gaza. So and the wall, and this is the wall. The wall, as you might know, you probably know, is more than twice as high as the Berlin Wall was. When the Israelis see the Berlin Wall at Checkpoint Charlie, it's disappointing. That's the wall? This is a wall. This is 12 meters high. The wall is 5 times longer than the Berlin Wall was. And the Berlin Wall was linear. This wall encompasses tens of thousands of Palestinians in cells. For example, the city of Tulkarm is completely surrounded with a wall. Kalkilia but also Tulkarm. Tulkarm is up here. Is completely surrounded by the wall, as all these agricultural areas and places like, for example, Abu Dis. So Abu Dis is not only surrounded with the wall, but you can see the wall comes through the center of the city. Well, where's the security? It's not separating Israelis from Palestinians. It's separating Palestinians from Palestinians. So the wall is a border. It isn't and it's for annexation and imprisonment. It isn't for security. And, okay, and so, you know, you have the wall that really defines, all right, the wall really defines the Bantustan of the apartheid state that Israel created. In other words, this is Israel's version of the two-state solution. It isn't really two states, it's apartheid. So Israel's done two things. First of all, Israel eliminated the two-state solution. That wasn't an Arab trick. Israel did this systematically and deliberately over 50 years. So Israel eliminated the two-state solution. And Israel then created one state. I mean, there already is one state. It exists. There's only one. You can't get into this entire country without going through Israeli borders. There's only one effective government in this whole country, and it's not the Palestinian Authority. There's only one army, obviously. There's only one currency. Whether you're in Gaza or Hebron or Tel Aviv, you're using the shekel, which is controlled by the Bank of Israel. There's only one water system, one electrical system, one highway system. In other words, by any measure of what a country is, there already is one country here. But it's an apartheid country. Because apartheid, of course, means two things. One is the apart. When one population separates itself from the others, and you just have to look at the Israeli flag, and you can see that that's the case. And then that population creates a permanent regime of domination. Separation and domination defines apartheid. Anywhere, not just in South Africa. It doesn't matter if South Africa was based on race, and this is based on religion or nationality or ethnicity. It doesn't matter what the basis of apartheid is. Once you have a regime of separation and domination, that's apartheid. So we have a new apartheid regime in the world. Who would have thought? Especially in the Holy Land. But that's what we have. So the Palestinians today are half the population of this country, but they're confined to 10% of the land overall. Now, I also don't accept anymore the difference between the occupied territories in Israel. You know, we keep talking about occupation. There's no difference, really, between the occupied territory and Israel if you're a Palestinian. It's true, if you're a Palestinian citizen of Israel, you can vote. That doesn't mean very much, because your vote doesn't mean anything. But the same process of house demolitions, land expropriation, imprisonment takes place in Israel. Not only in the occupied territories, So, Palestinians are 20% of the Israeli population, but they're confined by laws and regulations to 3.5% of the land. So in other words, if you take the whole country, the Palestinians are locked into 10% of the land. That's it. And that's apartheid. So, what we're saying is the two-state solution is gone. I think everybody knows that. The one-state solution that exists is apartheid. And that's not acceptable, obviously, to any of us. So it seems to me that there's only one option left. And that is this. To say to Israel, okay, you Israel, the framing is very important. You, Israel, created one state. You did that, not the Palestinians. Fine, we accept that. We accept it. But it cannot be an apartheid state. That we can't accept. So this one state, the apartheid state that you, Israel, created, has to be transformed into one democratic state of equal rights for all its people. I mean, I don't see how you can go anywhere else, actually. And it shouldn't be such a shocking idea for Europe. A democracy. You know, I mean, is that such a radical, terrible left-wing idea? A democracy. So that's basically the idea. Now, of course there's a complication, because we can't have things too simple. And that is this. And this is where I want to bring you in a little bit into our discussions. It's interesting. To have one democratic state is fine with the Palestinians. And it's actually fine for the Israeli left. But the reality of the country is actually a binational reality. I mean, there are two national groups in this country: Palestinian Arabs and Israeli Jews. Whether there should be Israeli Jews or not, that's irrelevant. There are. You have to, I think you have to accept that there are two national groups. So the idea, I think it's important that not that there's any separation. You know, in other words, it's one country, one citizenship, one parliament, one election, complete equal rights. But nevertheless, in the Constitution acknowledges that there are two national groups. Just in order to give them, you know, to say, okay, it's okay. You can stay in the country, you're legitimate, because the fear of the Israelis, Israeli Jews, of course, is in this country, there'll be a Palestinian majority. What would prevent the Palestinians from doing to us what we do to them? Israelis aren't stupid. We know what we're doing. Using a democracy in the parliament, what's called the tyranny of the majority, in order to oppress the minority. That's what we do today. So what would prevent the Palestinian majority in the first day of parliament to pass a law saying all the Jews have to leave? In other words, what would prevent Palestine from becoming Algeria is what the Israelis would say. And, you know, regardless, I think we have to recognize that that's a problem. So the idea of a binational state is simply to say, in the constitution of the country, there are two national groups, and they can stay in the country. That's it. In other words, Parliament does not have the authority to pass laws that harm any national group. It doesn't give any privileges to anybody. It doesn't separate anybody. It simply gives Israeli Jews, in a sense, that collective security. Now they know they're safe, as not just as individuals, but as Israelis. They can continue to speak Hebrew, continue to have a Hebrew university, and so on, within one democratic state. In a way, it's not so different from other multinational states. You have Britain. Britain has 4 nations in it. The English, the Scots, the Welsh, and the Northern Irish. Spain, all right, with all its issues. But with Spain, you have still the Catalans, the Basques, the Spanish, and so on. You've got Belgium, you've got Canada, Switzerland, New Zealand, with the Maori and the other New Zealanders. There's many, many multinational states in the world, and each one has to find the right system that meets its needs.
South America.
South Africa. So I think this idea of binationalism gives Israeli Jews a sense of security without giving them any privilege, or without, you see, that's the idea. Now, that's a problem for Palestinians. This is part of the problem. Because for many Palestinians, especially Palestinians in the occupied territory and in the refugee camps, to say that this country is binational, to recognize Israeli Jews as a national group in the country, means to legitimize Zionism, or to legitimize settler colonialism. And that's too much for them. You see? So you've got an interesting split among Palestinians. Palestinians inside Israel, the 48 Palestinians, and most Palestinians in the diaspora don't have a problem with binationalism. I mean, they live it. But the Palestinians in the camps and in the occupied territory have a big problem actually saying, yes, we recognize an Israeli national group. You see? So that's I think, the issue. So we're trying to play with different models. And this is what I kind of want. It's interesting. Just to give you the idea of what we're talking about, what possibilities exist for the future. So there's 2 models. One is an actual binational democracy, where you come out and say, yes, there are 2 national groups. This would be an easier one for Israelis, I think, to accept. And here there's an interesting idea. And that is, what if we had 2 houses of parliament? Like Britain has the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Where one house of the real parliament, with the power of parliament, is elected by all the citizens. Everybody elects parliament, one parliament. But in every election you get 2 votes. And actually I got this idea from New Zealand. Because in New Zealand, the Maori have 2 votes. They vote for the parliament and then they vote for their own parties in parliament. So here the idea would be, you have a parliament, but alongside of it, Palestinians would vote for their representatives in a communal house. A communal house of parliament. Israeli Jews would vote for their representatives into this communal house. So you would have a representation of the two national groups. One reason would be that this would be a watchdog on the parliament to be sure it doesn't pass laws that are discriminatory, but also this House would give expression to the needs of the different communities. For example, the Palestinians might want to say, we would like a national museum. I mean, actually, they just opened a national museum in Birzeit, but, you know, or the Palestinians, you know, in other words, it would give some voice to these communities, but it would be subordinate, it would be under the main parliament. So that's one idea. The other idea goes another way. And that might be easier for Palestinians. And that says, all right, let's build one, not just one country, but one civil society. Let's have one, not a binational, but one civil identity. We're going to be, and then whatever we call the country, Israel-Palestine, Palestine-Israel, Orangeville, I don't know what the name's going to be. But let's put the emphasis on living together. We'll have civil marriage, we'll have integrated schools, people can live wherever they want to live, and especially, I think, for young people. The assumption is that there's a lot of people that don't want to be locked into being Palestinian or Israeli. A lot of young people just want to be in the country. Now, they're also Palestinians or Israelis, but they don't, you know, that's their background. That's not necessarily how they want to live. And try to create a new civil society. But for people that don't want that, or not yet, Israelis and Palestinians, it's okay. You can have your space. I'll give you one example, just quick. Refugees. The Palestinian refugees have been refugees for 70 years. They've been fighting for their Palestinian identity. They want to come home to Palestine as Palestinians. Well, they'll come home. That has to be. But when they do, they're not going to jump into a civil society. You know, they want to be Palestinian, at least for a generation or two or three. I mean, and then find the balance between being Palestinian and being part of a wider society. And so you need to give space to people that don't want right now to go into a civil society. But that's okay. It's a multicultural democracy, we call it. At any rate, these are kind of two models. But what it gets at, just to show you, there's nothing to do, I'm not asking you to do anything, is to bring you into some of the issues and some of the problems we have in agreeing. Even between, you know what, the biggest problem in our group is between the 48 Palestinians and the West Bank Palestinians over the issue of binationalism. So these are issues that we have to try to work out and find the right kind of a model for us. But in the end, let me just finish by saying the problem we have is that we don't have today an end game. You know, the two-state solution is gone. Well, what do we want? And you can't be in a political struggle if you can't tell people what you want. Whether it's one state or two states or 10 states, or I don't know. You have to have something. Otherwise, you know, so BDS is very effective. It's called BDS in Germany, even though it's really kind of BKS, but never mind. Disinvestment or something you say in German, I guess. So we have BDS, which is very powerful, but why are we BDSing? And we can say end the occupation, but that's a very general thing. So what we're missing today is that end game. BDS for, I would say, but we're not there yet, but this is my idea, BDS for BDS. Boycotts, divestment, sanctions for a binational democratic state. It gives focus, it gives direction. So we'll see what happens. Ideas.